how do we vet these vendors properly, and how do we certify, if they've been around for 3 months or 3 years and 6 months or 6 years, and whether they're having success doing what they're doing. And I think that's a challenge for the consultants. I talked to a good friend of mine recently, and he explained, it's really challenging for us as an organization. They're a very large consulting firm, very reputable consulting firm, but they have hundreds of vendors calling on them every single day. And they have over 100 vendors in their offices every single month. And they have a whole procurement team that, or I should say a team that analyzes and vets these opportunities to see if they would be options for their customers. But that team that is listening to these vendors is then downstream communicating to the consultants or the people managing their customers. And so the message often gets diluted downstream, the further away from the communication you go. But they're all saying the same thing. They're all point solutions or specific need solutions that are saying we're going to save 20%. How does a consultant really validate that? And how do they measure that? Because no one solution in and of itself typically drives 20%. It takes other pieces of the puzzle to work together to generate a 20% savings. There's a joke in the industry, if we all save 20% and we put in 5 vendors, then healthcare would be free. And we know that's not true. So how do we analyze the impact of those savings, and how do we analyze the impact at a point solution level that's really meaningful, and how do we validate who really gets credit for the savings? Let me give you an example. The network piece is something that we market and we talk about will generate X% of savings off of the in-force broad-based network. We call that the market cost. And we have an advantage in that our costs are hard costs, meaning unit cost or a fixed cost of what the costs are going to be. If you're paying $100 for a service under your current arrangement, we can say under our contract, you would have paid $80. It's easy to measure 20% savings in that scenario, right? Another factor, though, is not all charges are billed at the same rate. So maybe the vendor or the provider, I should say, billed $200 and you're paying $100 today, and my provider billed $250, but you're only going to pay $80, right? It's really easy to say it's still 20% regardless of the billed charges. But there's another step in that process is somebody had to adjudicate and pay the claim, which we call a third-party administrator, and they had to analyze the claim to make sure it was appropriate, that it was a covered benefit, that it was not a duplicate claim, that it was not ineligible. And any edits off of that claim are done by the third-party administrator. And so they have a piece of that equation that would either validate the 20% or add to the 20% cost savings in that scenario. And then you take it a step further. If there was any drugs associated that, we had to get a prescription filled with that claim, then the PBM has a role in that as well. So collectively, there's going to be a measurement if you're quoting one health plan versus the other health plan, but there's 3 or 4 pieces inside of that equation, not just one that's being measured for the total cost of care. And so when we look at those things, we take credit for that. We have to understand we all need to work together in an integrated model, unbundled, then repackage and integrate it to really produce that value.